Hi, my name is Henry Lesperance, and today we're going to talk about cultural diversity and analyze some of the paradoxes based on the academic article, The Paradox of Cultural Diversity in the Collective Brain. We will address how diversity relates to innovation, which is a function of three variables: sociality, fidelity in information transmission, and cultural traits. We will also look at how the framework of cultural evolvability can help us interpret our findings on cultural diversity. So let's get started. We live in an increasingly interconnected and multicultural world. Diversity has been central to the success of all complex life on Earth. Diversity provides the new traits needed to make life evolvable. Until around 1.2 billion years ago, the source of that diversity was mutation. That is, genetic innovation through serendipity and incremental improvements alone. Today, diverse societies recombine diverse cultural traits to empower cultural evolution. For example, large novel leaps in innovation can emerge through intellectual arbitrage, taking a perspective or solutions from one place or discipline and applying it to another. This is the strength of transdisciplinary approaches in academia, and this is how the framework of cultural diversity applies to this class. Through our review of literature from different disciplines and interactions with scholars from other disciplines, we have recombined knowledge that has helped us think of our own work differently. But there are many barriers to cultural traits meeting and recombining in social settings, as we have also experienced. Moreover, the barriers present a series of trade-offs one needs to consider if one is to harness the innovative power of diversity. Let us assume the following premises. Cultural trait diversity is people with different beliefs, behaviors, assumptions, values, technologies, and any other transmissible trait. Humans are deeply cooperative species. Human societies are collective brains. People are unaware that at best they possess a partial causal model of most of the world they interact with. The universe of solutions is limited by their explanatory depth. A lack of causal understanding does not prevent solutions from accumulating through selective social learning. People within every society have cultural brains that have evolved to selectively seek adaptive knowledge and socially transmit solutions. If this collective brain is not interconnected, the range of possible solutions is limited. Innovations emerge at a population level through the transmission of serendipitous mistakes, incremental improvements, and novel recombinations. Diversity is fuel for recombination. It offers almost unlimited innovation potential. And recombination has far more potential to drive innovation than incremental improvement or luck. Therefore, for innovation to flourish, there needs to be a careful consideration on how sociality, fidelity in information, and cultural trait diversity function. Let's look first at sociality. Sociality is defined as a society's size and interconnectedness, which affects a number of models available for learning. Larger, more interconnected societies offer more people from whom to learn and have more ideas that can more easily flow through dense social networks to meet and recombine. However, there is asymptotic relationships between sociology and cultural complexity. Some traits are more difficult to learn, decreasing transmission fidelity as cultural complexity increases. For example, a PhD student or recipient has a high specialized form of knowledge that took many years of training to acquire. This form of knowledge is a barrier to sociality. We can also think of language having a similar effect. On another note, too small of a population means too few models to learn from, but too large a population creates a coordination challenge, reducing effective sociality. Increases in population size create coordination challenges, and increases in interconnectivity can reduce diversity through conformity. This occurs in tight societies, for example, in East Asian cultures where deference to authority is encouraged. Thus, tight societies are associated with incremental innovation, as opposed to loose societies which are associated with radical innovation. Large populations have low network density and low interconnectedness, and this has a cost in sociology. Now let's look at the next variable, which is transmission fidelity. And this is fidelity of information transmission, which is affected or affects how much information is lost during social learning. So this really applies to people that are teachers. Transmission fidelity refers to the degree of information preservation during social learning and therefore increases by better means of communication. To better understand transmission fidelity, let's explore how different peoples have learned over history. First, in many hunter-gatherer societies, teaching occurs by allowing children to observe, perhaps slowed down actions. More explicit and effortful instruction is observed among many pastoralist societies, and compulsory formal education emerged as a response to the Industrial Revolution. Small-scale societies evolved with a growing tendency towards pair bonding and shared productive interest, arguing that cooperation with unrelated individuals can decrease a cost-benefit ratio of learning more complex technologies and social norms. In the present, cultural evolution continues to increase transmission fidelity in our increasingly culturally complex modern world through technologies such as a printing press, radio, television, internet, video conferencing, and social media. However, high transmission fidelity can also reduce cognitive and cultural diversity and increasing cultural weirding, that is, West educated, industrial, rich, and democratic culture. Thus, there is also a limit to improving cultural complexity via cultural fidelity alone. So now let's talk about the third variable, which is cultural trait diversity. Cultural trait diversity affects the range of possible solutions available for recombination. We've already talked about how diversity is defined by certain traits such as beliefs, behaviors, assumptions, values, and technologies, and any other transmissible trait. That is the definition of cultural trait diversity. Cultural trait diversity is a product of cultural evolution. However, diversity comes in many forms, and interpreting the diverse literature on diversity poses many challenges. The two most important are definitions of diversity differ between academic fields. And secondly, even when the definitions are similar, the measurements may differ. And this is the biggest challenge of modeling culture, is the differences amongst fields. However, there's a framework that can help us start talking more on diversity in a transdisciplinary approach, and that's the cultural evolvability framework that can help make sense findings and perhaps guide future research in a subject that is still loosely defined. So let's look at the 5 ways in which cultural evolvability may help us better understand how diversity works. First, there needs to be a tolerance for diversity because currently less adaptive traits may be more adaptive when the environment changes. Second, understanding that under-optimization and inequality in outcomes happens because not all will have optimal strategy for the current environment. Third, it helps explain levels of entrepreneurship, innovation, and entrepreneurship means deviating from the status quo. Fourth, it can prevent polarization and cultural specialization. This is done through a series of sanctions that range from harsh to modest, affecting different cultural outcomes. Fifth, it can depend on cultural clustering, and cultural clustering may be created by many different processes. There are many considerations one has to assess when modeling diversity, but the framework of cultural evolvability may work for scholars, researchers, and implementers of policy looking for ways to harness the innovative powers of diversity. This presentation is based on the paradoxes of diversity and the collective brain. Thank you very much.